Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Overtime with myself, Mr. Fantastic. Just want to start off by saying thank you for all the support. It's been amazing. Thank you to everyone that's been watching. Keep on sharing. And today we're back with another banging episode. And of course, we have a special guest in the building. It's a good friend of mine. We got Dylan in the building. How are you, bro?
Yeah, I'm blessed, man. How you doing, Mr. Fantastic?
I'm doing well. I'm blessed to have you here. It's a privilege to have you here. So basically today we're going to do what we usually do. We're just going to talk about your achievements, things that you've overcome through faith, really, and with the hopes of inspiring young people, inspiring people to reach out. So what would you like to start on? What would you like to speak about first?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on the show. Really privileged and honored to share my story. I guess I should give everyone a bit of context as to who I am, where I come from, and how important my faith has been in all the achievements that I've made. I'll talk about my family. I'm the British-born son of Congolese and Rwandan refugees who fled.
You're from Rwanda as well?
Yeah. So
nice.
dual heritage. So my parents, they actually fled the genocide in 1994.
Oh man.
And they were forged on the anvil of adversity. They sacrificed a lot to get us here. To give us a better future. And from a very young age, they inculcated in me values of resilience and ambition. They always taught me to try to defy the status quo where possible. And my dad, he previously received an offer to study at Cambridge University to study electrical engineering back in the 80s, but he couldn't afford it, so he had to turn it down. And he always encouraged me from a young age to read widely. Both he and my big brother would read to me before going to sleep, and those values were really important to me growing up. He also ran his own charity that taught non-natives IT skills, and as a consequence, that motivated me to pursue a career that had a moral purpose. And then there's my mum, who motivated me to go to church from a very young age, and she's always been very loving, very caring, very supportive of all my dreams. And she's gone through a lot. So it was actually her side of the family that suffered during the genocide. And they were caught in the crossfire between the tensions between the Hutus and the Tutsis. And she lost a lot of members of her mother's side. But she was very resolute, and both her and my dad came over here a few years before I was born. And they set up shop, and we because I'm the youngest of 5, so all my siblings will remember that time. And I would hear about the struggles they faced from a young age. Even when they came over here, it wasn't easy at all. It wasn't smooth sailing. We grew up in a low-income household in West London, and I went to a state academy, and I had a lot of positive teachers who would encourage me to look beyond our limited resources. But then you also have those teachers who have very old-fashioned ideas of what it means to be successful, especially in British society.
So, I hear that.
They wouldn't invest as much time in me because they didn't really see the potential in me, and that could have crippled me. The times where I was told that going to top-tier universities like Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, those were limited to a particular kind of student, and I didn't fit that profile. And I could have let those words cripple me. I could have let it dismotivate me. But I come from a very resolute family, very resilient, as you can tell from my story. And I had already been attending church by that point. And my faith was absolutely fundamental in not letting those discouraging words cripple me and stop me from dreaming big. I was hearing in the church that, look, if you use your faith, if you obey the word of God, if you submit to His will, and as long as your dreams are aligned with His
God's
vision
plans,
for your life, then you can achieve whatever you set out to achieve. And that message was instilled into me, and it carried me all the way to, it's been carrying me throughout my entire life. And it was especially important in the last 18 months where I set out to raise over £60,000 in order to study law at Cambridge. So I did my first degree at UCL in history and philosophy of science. Had a fantastic time there, met incredible people, and it was absolutely important that I did well during my time at UCL because in order to meet the academic requirements, I had to get a high 2-1. And so I applied to study the accelerated law program at Cambridge for students who already have a first degree in another subject. And and I got my offer in December of 2018, so like in the middle of my third year at UCL. But then, it became very apparent to me that I wasn't going to be able to meet the financial requirements in the usual way, because it's a second degree, it's self-funded, and there aren't any loans available. There are a few scholarships, I managed to secure a few, but it wasn't enough to cover
the whole cost.
the whole cost. And it was incredibly challenging because, I did a few paid internships, again, not enough. And so it was absolutely important that I got creative and started strategizing and thinking of other ways to raise the amount. So I spoke with a good friend of mine, also a fellow Christian, Isaiah, and he was in a similar predicament to me about 2 years beforehand, where he had to raise about the same amount to study at Harvard. And he appealed to, he launched his own fundraising appeal online, a crowdfunding campaign. And, I was so inspired by his grit, by his determination, and, he was able to raise over 60,000 in a very short space of time. So it took him about 4 to 5 weeks. And so I asked him for advice, and we brainstormed, we thought carefully about how I would craft my narrative, and I had to be, quite vulnerable and transparent about my background, my family, my upbringing. And, I didn't want it to be a sob story. I wanted people to understand that my ambition is to serve others in my capacity as a lawyer. And my campaign attracted a lot of attention. It was really overwhelming. And when I first launched in June of 2019, I did it for 2 months, and I raised about 30,000 if you include the offline bursaries and donations. But that wasn't enough for both years, so I had to negotiate with Cambridge and defer entry. And so, and I think part of the reason why I didn't raise the full amount was because at some point I was wrestling with a lot of self-doubt. Despite all of my credentials, despite all of the things I had achieved in the past, I still needed to do a lot of introspection and understand that some of the criticisms that I was experiencing only signaled that I was doing something right, that I was doing something that was going to be groundbreaking for a lot of people who still have very fixed ideas of what it means to be a Cambridge student or what it means to be a lawyer. I had people, some anonymous, some people that I know not very well, but they're in my network, who were very, but very critical and very, some people were actually quite nasty. They were like, I hope you don't go to Cambridge, burn in hell. I had all kinds of horrible things being said to me. And I have to admit, at some point, it became quite exhausting.
Yeah.
It became, quite exasperating, and I lost sleep. I felt like at one point I questioned whether this was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I took some time out, and during the summer period of last year, I spent a lot of time really delving deeply into the Bible, and thinking very carefully about what it was, how my campaign tied to a wider mission of Christianity, and what my Christian principles, how my Christian principles have informed my decisions, and especially this decision to study at Cambridge, because I think a big part of being a Christian is defying societal expectations.
Yeah.
And showing people that God is much bigger than man. Yeah. And for lots of people, going to Cambridge is seemingly impossible for someone in my position, someone who's a son of refugees, someone who's black, someone who's state educated. I intersect various demographics. I'm studying at Cambridge is just a fleeting dream, a fleeting fantasy, and so it was so important for me to really come back to myself, to not let my emotions be amped up by social media. Social media has an incredibly toxic effect on people.
Yes. Oh, it's mad. It's absolutely mad. I feel like even with like what people, like from what you're saying, like some of like the responses in which people have, I feel like sometimes people don't realize the effect in which their words have. I remember like years ago, something that I heard, and it sticks with me today. It was actually from I don't know if you ever heard of Skit Guys. They're like a Christian YouTube page. And they did one thing called baggage, and they said something along the lines of, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." That's the biggest lie we tell children. When I heard that, I'm like, it's so true. Because we tell people, like, as a child, like, oh, you go and tell your teacher, oh, he called me this word. Oh, words don't matter. But words have a huge effect on you mentally. And sometimes people can just speak out of, like for instance, like, if you look at Twitter. People, I do it sometimes, like, when you get angry, you pick up your phone and you just tweet. And people do that when they speak as well. Like, they get mad and then they just talk. Some people, like, could have came from a place where it's like, oh, they don't understand why you're doing it. Some people could have been upset because they're like, oh, damn it, I didn't have the idea. Do you know what I mean? And them expressing themselves, they don't have this knowledge of the effect it can have on the next person, the effect that it can have on a certain individual. I remember Bishop, he once told me, he said, your words can lead someone to heaven or hell just because of the amount of power in which it has. And something that you said like, when everything was happening, like, you went to the Bible, like, that's where you went when you were feeling this. And I feel like that's also something where people kind of get lost. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I don't know if you would consider it something of like, maybe, well, it was to do with your mental health. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so like, I feel like some Christians, especially like us young Christians, like, we have this taboo where it's like mental health and Christianity don't mix. Like, you don't bring the two together. But the truth is, there's Bible verses about God telling people not to be anxious. So if the two do not mix, why is he then saying it in his word? Do you know what I mean? And the same way how word has power, from this negative words that people are coming from outside, people forget that, all right, let me go and turn to the word of God. The word of God will then comfort me. The word of God will then fill me with strength, with wisdom, with direction to get back at it. Because from, obviously, you made it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure that you turning to the word of God had a huge part to play. And I feel like maybe if you didn't turn to the word of God, maybe the outcome may have been different. Maybe you would have just said, yo, like, however much you had raised at that point, okay, maybe that's enough. We'll sort out the rest later. Let me stay off of this, or maybe you might have even just given up on the whole plan. But the fact that you turned to God, turned back to the Bible, turned back to the Word, was just something that was just so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Christians neglect the importance of maintaining your mental well-being. I think prayer and reading the Bible are absolutely fundamental, but you have to be quite deliberate and intentional about how you then apply that to being, mentally in a good place. And you need to be very specific about which verses of the Bible you're going to be constantly citing when those moments come. Because if you think about how Jesus defended himself in the wilderness when he was faced with all kinds of temptations, he was citing the Bible, and he was very specific on which Bible verses he was citing. He wasn't just citing any random verse. So he backed himself. He was like his own advocate, his own lawyer. And I'm actually in the process of launching my own brand called Dylan the Advocate, because I think that word advocacy, it's not limited to the court of law.
Yes.
You're constantly having to advocate for yourself in interviews, in the workplace, among friends, among family. You're constantly having to advocate something, and being able to do it from a place of humility, of compassion, and wisdom. That's something that comes with training. And so I had to sort of retrain myself and go back to first principles, because this wasn't the first time that I had encountered an obstacle in my life. People, I mentioned in my story, my backstory, I've had all kinds of people try to limit me and put these ceilings, and so and whenever that would happen, I would always go back to the Word of God. This was an especially difficult case, but it was the same. I applied the same method, and the result, speak for themselves. But I think you're absolutely important in that we can't divorce mental health from our Christianity. In the same way, we can't divorce any aspect of our life from our Christianity, and we need to be able to have those conversations and be open to that.
Yeah, I just feel, but sometimes I'll be very honest. I feel like sometimes even like the church, we're not just any in specific church, but just the church as a whole. I feel like we're not really ready for that conversation about mental health. I feel like it's kind of sometimes just brushed to the side, and it's like you overcome. But sometimes like we need to speak. Do you know what I mean? This is one reason also why I started my podcast as well. Sometimes I just feel like I need to talk. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like I have a lot in my mind and I just need to put it out. And with this platform, with the podcast, I can speak.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can speak, I can vent, I can let it all out. I even, like, for instance, with me, I've suffered from mental health issues before. Suffered from anxiety for a couple of years, and I remember I was suffering from anxiety, but I knew it was anxiety, but I didn't want to admit it, because I'm like, no, like I have demons if I have anxiety. Do you know what I mean? Like, nah, something's wrong. So I was like, I didn't want to say it, so I was just downplaying it. I was just like, I'm tired, like, let me just take a nap. And I remember, like, there was one day I was at work, I literally had enough, like, and I just, in the middle of like the day, I just stood up, just walked out of my office, and I walked for like 20, no one knew where I was. I left my phone and I just walked, and literally at that day I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't keep hiding it. And I went to a pastor in my church. He sat me down and we spoke, and his response was not what I expected. I was expecting him to be like, oh, like, there's something wrong with you. Like, you there's demons in you. You just pray about it. And then I was like, what do you mean? He's like, everything that you're feeling, get on your knees and just let it all out to God. Just let it all out. And he told me, I guarantee you afterwards you feel better. And that's something that I had to learn to do as well. Like, when I started to feel anxious, when I started to feel a bit uneasy with my mental health, God's the first person I go to. Absolutely. Do you know what I mean? God's my shrink. Do you know what I mean? He's the one that I go to when I'm feeling uneasy, when I'm feeling low, I'm just like, yo, this is what it is. This is how I'm feeling. I need your help right now. And then he helps me to overcome. He gives me that comfort in which I'm needed.
Yeah, and I think two other practical coping measures that I've gotten into the habit of taking in order to maintain my mental well-being. One would be journaling, and journaling has been a tradition for lots of people, a lot of our ancestors, like intellectual ancestors. And it's largely because it allows you to chronicle your thoughts and to register your feelings in an objective way. So you're just like, a lot of the times when you feel a particular way, it feels as though that emotion, that state of being defines you.
Yeah.
And that's not true, of course, because feelings, emotions, thoughts, they're fleeting, they pass away.
Yeah.
And so if you're able to write it down and talk about it as though it's this independent thing which exists outside of you, then you're able to deal with it in a much more responsible way. Rather than reacting to it, you observe it from all angles and you can park it, right? And journaling is an amazing way to do that, because often our thoughts are very, very erratic, especially when there's a lot going on, and it can be quite overwhelming, quite exhausting, and we're not thinking clearly. And so journaling, I normally journal at the start of the day, and at the end of the day, I write about things I'm grateful for, things that I hope to achieve today, and at the end of the day, I'll think about what went well, what I could have done better, and I'm taking it one day at a time.
Yeah.
And when you look back on previous entries to your journal, it's just a great feeling to feel like you've progressed.
Yeah.
There's always something that you can be grateful for every single day, and it's not always something big. It can be something as small as a cup of coffee that you had, that felt nice in the moment.
Yeah.
Just small things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as long as you celebrate those small wins as well as the big wins, all the noise that surrounds you, it fades into the background. And the second thing that's been incredibly useful, in fact, two other things, has been strolling, going for like an evening stroll or maybe a morning stroll. It really does depend on your calendar and what you'd prefer. But I prefer doing it in the evenings because it's just it helps me to prepare for the next day it's not like I have to wake up super early, and it doesn't require that much of a commitment.
Yeah.
And you just go around, just walking, listening to a nice playlist, and
or even a podcast.
Yeah, or
maybe
or
OverTime.
Exactly. But yeah, it's a great way to just reflect.
Yeah.
Because I think self-awareness and self-reflection
is very important. That's something
absolutely important.
That's something that I like. For instance, with me, one thing that I've made a part of myself, and I try to do as much as possible, is self meditation. When you say meditation, it sounds like very Eastern
philosophy.
Yeah, philosophy. But it's literally just a thing of where sometimes a friend of mine, he convinced me to wake up at 5, so that's what I do. And sometimes I just wake up, have a cup of coffee, and I just sit and I just think. I just think of, because sometimes it's like you have a lot in your mind, and that can also trigger anxiety as well, because it's there's so much that you want to do. So I dedicate a little time in the morning where I just sit, have my cup of coffee, and just think. So what are we going to do here? What's our next move? What are we going to invest in? Or how am I going to, do you know what I mean? Where it's not a thing of where my process of thinking is rushed and I can plan everything out. Yeah. And it gives me a bit more of an ease where it's okay, I kind of know more what I'm doing. I kind of have more of a plan. So it's like anxiety can't really come if I feel control. Because anxiety, I can't remember who it was that said it. I heard someone say that anxiety is fear in control. When you fear something and you don't feel in control, that's when you start to get anxious. Because you're worried and you're like, I can't control this. I can't determine how long it's going to take for this to happen. And then that's when those feelings start to come and start to fester inside of you. But once you feel more in control with your thought, with your mind, it just eases everything. But of course, the ultimate solution is Christ himself.
Yeah.
Getting that comfort from him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think having those conversations with God are absolutely important. And to be just be completely sincere and just open about everything. Just completely open. And the other coping measure that I was going to mention was, feel free to speak with someone, like a physical being, because it helps to speak with God. Ultimately, that's He's always going to be like the first go-to. But sometimes it helps to also speak with someone whom you trust. There might be someone who you don't know, so maybe like a therapist, maybe someone who's qualified to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Some people think of therapy as, as like going to therapy as a sign of weakness. I tend to differ in my view. I think therapy is extremely helpful in having someone who just can't judge you. Like, they don't know you personally, they don't have any personal ties with you. So you can just so you speak with them, and they probe. They're really good at probing. They're really good at asking you the right questions, and it's about you figuring out what works for you. But I think it's not something I don't see it as a solution. But I think it's part of it should be part of some people's toolkit. Some people don't need it. They might have. I don't have the luxury of having a partner. Yeah. Because I think my partner would definitely be that kind of person, the person who I'd feel comfortable having this conversation with.
Yeah. I even spoke about the episode last week. I actually mentioned that, and I was saying how since we spoke about love, we had Hervey and Mia on the show, and I was saying how it's nice to just know that going home to someone that can just hold you and love you and just hear you. Do you know what I mean? And hear you out. But obviously, there's a whole more. It's more like a relationship's more to that. If you want to know more, you guys can head back to the last episode, and then they speak about it in detail and stuff like that. But yeah, that's very true. To just have someone there that you can talk to, because even like, for instance, with me, when I was suffering with anxiety, I excluded myself from everyone around me. I didn't want to speak, and I feel like that's what caused it. Not caused it, but it helped it as well. Do you know what I mean? It helped the feeling of how I was to fester and everything like that, because I was not open to anyone. Like, recently I even spoke to my mom about like that whole situation and everything like that, and she's like, she could see with her own eyes that something wasn't right with me, but she can't force me to speak. She can't force me to open up to her. And it made her feel quite sad, because she knew, like, she can see something's wrong with her son, but there's nothing physically that she can do about it. And, overcoming everything, it got me to a point where I realized that there's people in the world that actually love me. There's people, I've become very close with my friends. I hated social gatherings. I go out with people. I spend time with people. And sometimes just stuff like that, it just makes you... It makes you feel normal. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it just makes you feel normal.
Yeah, like you're in a good place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think I think you pick up on something really important, and the other reason why I think it's important for people to at least consider therapy if they see that their mental well-being isn't where they want it to be, because often when you do speak to people who know you personally. They, without even trying, will somehow blame themselves for you being in that position. They'll think that they had some part to do with it, when 9 out of 10 times that isn't the case. So I think it is absolutely important to to at least consider other avenues. You know, have like a holistic plan of action. But yeah, no, and I should talk about some of the other things that my campaign taught me.
Yeah.
And you know, the reason why I think it was part of the reason why it was so successful is because the second time around when I launched this year in like May, I focused exclusively on the positive support I was getting.
Yeah.
Like even when I launched it last year, the amount of support that I was getting, positive support, it trumped all that negativity.
Yeah.
But I for some reason I was taken aback by the negativity. This time around, I had paid no attention at all to the negativity. And people, it's funny because a few articles came out, you know, in The Guardian, BBC.
Yeah, I remember
Metro,
like even like people were seeing articles of you and they were sending it to me. They're like, bro, he's in the newspaper, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Like we're just sending it to each other. I was like, yo, I want to be in the newspaper one day.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we all have stories to tell, and so I felt very comfortable sharing my story with everyone, but that obviously leaves you open to criticism.
Yes.
But this time around, I paid no attention at all. So a particular article two articles that came out by Legal Cheek. So Legal Cheek is really popular, especially among lawyers and law students. And it's known for being quite gossipy, like people, especially in the comment section, which is almost always anonymous. They'll just talk absolute rubbish, and they'll say all kinds of horrible things. But this time around, I mean, even till today, I have not taken the time to look at those comments because it means nothing to me. It means absolutely nothing to me. And I think it's important for all of us to be very selective with the things that we read, the people that we have conversations with. That's not to say that I'm not willing to hear out people.
Yeah.
But I expect a certain level of respect.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to give me that respect, then you can forget it.
Yeah, that's true.
And yeah, so that was absolutely important because it just meant I could focus on the people that actually care about this cause. And yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I was really, really, really happy when I surpassed the target. And I still had a month away from the deadline, and so you know, it really taught me a lot about the importance of faith, the importance of resilience, the importance of first principles. You know, just understanding there are verses of the Bible that deal with these issues head on, and so you need to memorize them. You need to, those verses need to be embedded in you.
Yeah. So
that whenever you're faced with these challenges, you're able to cite them immediately and nip it in the bud.
Yeah, I hear that. And like one thing that came to my mind while you were speaking, something that I heard a couple of years back, and it was a sermon from a bishop in Brazil, and he was basically speaking about the secret of success. And he said, and literally from what he said, I can like see it in what you did and like the actions in which you took. He said, first, to find your purpose, find what you want, find what you love, because obviously you can't do something that you don't want to do. Okay, cool, you found what you wanted to do. And then he said, now the second step is to strive to be the best. Strive to be the best, do everything that you can. And he said the third and one of the most important things is helping others.
Absolutely.
He said God will not give to you if you are not willing to then help others, if you're not willing then to grow his work, if you're not willing to inspire others. And from what you've done, I can, even if it's not apparent like now, well, obviously I don't know, maybe you can see, but maybe like the rest of us, like I haven't seen, people are being helped. People's eyes, visions are being opened to say like, yo, look, if I really want to go to a top tier university, it doesn't matter where I grew up, it doesn't matter my cultural background, it doesn't matter. If I want something, I can do it. And people, they tend not to try until they've seen. So now that they've seen you do it, they're like, okay, I can do this as well. Also, you said that before the podcast we started recording, you're telling me about how you're planning to start up a charity as well.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, even that you found what you wanted to do, you're working towards it, and it's not like I'm not here to talk bad about like people, but certain people, they find what they want, find out, okay, I'm good at this, I'm gonna do that. They put all their strength in, but they don't care about those around them. They don't care about putting other people on. Obviously, not saying that you need to put other people on, but even to just inspire others, they don't care. But I feel like once you do that and you do it with God, God's just going to be with you, and He's just going to keep on pushing you and just elevating you and opening so many doors for you.
That is fantastic. I think you summed that up so well. And it's funny you used the word elevate. That's actually the name of the charity that I'm in the process of establishing. And the aim of the charity is very simple: is to help people who are in a very similar position to me, black, who's met all the academic requirements to study at these great universities, and all that's missing is the funding. And so the aim will be to provide scholarships, full scholarships to these individuals. And yeah, I think I've made it very clear right from the start of my campaign that my aim to be a lawyer is much more than just me being able to make a decent living and doing something that I'll enjoy. Public speaking, that's something that I've enjoyed for a very long time. But it's about being able to be a positive steward of social change. It's about being able to inspire others to pursue their goals, their dreams. And I've been working with a few charities, the Amos Bursary, the Migrant Leaders, the Leto Foundation. These are all fantastic organizations that have inspired me to pursue my goals, and now it's my time to give back and pay it forward.
Yeah, it's all just one cycle.
Yeah.
You inspire someone else goes and inspires someone, and they just keep on going like that. We're gonna make the world a better place. Social Club said it: if we can't change the world, we're gonna die trying. And honestly, even like with the podcast as well, like I could have just had a podcast where I got my friends on, we just did banter. Like that was my initial plan. That was the initial plan, because you know me, I like to make jokes. I'm a bubbly. Like I feel like when I tell people about my podcast and what it's about, they're like, nah, not you. Nah, you can't do that. And I'm like, no, I'm being serious. Like the whole point is to it's a very not formal, but it's like very insightful. Like we speak, get different people, talk about all these things. They're like, nah, you're probably there like telling jokes. But the reason, yeah, we can do both. But it's a thing of where I wanted to do this because I even had a different project. I'm gonna do it for the future. Don't want to speak too much on that. When it happens, it happens. But I was like, I'm gonna start OverTime, and the reason why it is OverTime, the name is OverTime, is because I wanted people that worked hard to come on the show and to be like, look, if I did it, you can do it as well. I'm a Christian, and I was able to achieve this with faith. I didn't have to, because even like, for instance, with me, like when I started the collective, for those of you that don't know, I'm the co-founder of the Big Fish collective. It was like, first, it was just, we're a collective for creatives. Oh yeah, and we Christian. Like there was the and we, but then God was like, no, like you're gonna do this. Your plans will still be what you want, but I will be in the middle. And through doing all of this, you're gonna open so many people's eyes, because like I feel like in the UK, Christians we're kind of like, if we need to be successful, we need to not denounce our faith, but let me just put it to the side. People know I'm Christian because I don't do all of these things. I was gonna like go into specifics, but everyone's faith's different, so I can't say like, do you know what I mean? But no, but I wanted to show people, I wanted to inspire people and be like, look, you can chase your dreams, and you can have you can scream Jesus to the world, and you can still make what you want to do. And It was a pleasure having you. I really
so
enjoyed the conversation. I feel like we spoke on a lot of interesting topics, a lot of important topics as well, and it was just an absolute pleasure. We're gonna have the links to your socials, everything in the description down below. Make sure you get at him. Make sure you follow him. When the charity starts, make sure you guys get involved. Whatever. I don't know. I don't own a charity. I don't know how it works. But make sure you support the cause, guys. And anything you'd like to say before we finish?
Well, no, I think we covered all bases, and I'm blessed and very, very privileged to be on the show, and I'm very grateful.
Yes.
You gave me the opportunity to share my story.
Thank you. So thank you for another guys listening to another episode of Overtime. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and see you guys next week. Bye.